Hello, my name is James, and this is how I take portraits. So I love taking portraits. I love shooting in that classic fine art style, and I love to put my own little spin on things. And whenever I post on social media or website, I get more than a few inquiries from people asking, what camera I use, what lens I use. The strangest one is where I bought my ladder. For some reason that keeps coming up. I'll answer that question today. But I decided I wanted to make this short little video to discuss the different elements that go into a shoot, give you a bit more information about those elements and how I combine them all together to create a fine art shoot. So here we go. So in terms of fine art creative shoots, typically I like to use either a really great location or I'll use backdrops depending on what's available. If I can use props, I'll use props and shoots. I like to have a good group of people around me on set or on location. I also like to keep the lighting very simple. And finally, I like to use both digital and film cameras. So in terms of creative spaces, if you've got access to one that will really help build that fine art look, use it. Unfortunately, I don't always have access to one, which means that I will use a lot of backdrops and shoots. But the good thing is with backdrops is you can get them at a lot of places nowadays, and you don't have to spend an arm and a leg to get one that will really give off a beautiful effect for fine art creative shoots. So for example, this one here. I bought this one in 2021 and I use this one a lot for black and white, for sepia, and even in color. It gives off a really lovely effect for that fine art look. And also on top of that, because of the fact that it's not one solid block of color, it has a bit of contrast, and even when it's wrinkled, it kind of really reinforces that classic look that I like to go for. The good thing is the reverse side is also pretty good. So I use this reverse side a lot when I want something which isn't going to be as dark. Maybe I want a background that's a little bit lighter, but I still want a bit of contrast. I still want it to have that fine art look or that classic look. And there's no rules that say you can't use the reverse side of a backdrop if it looks good. So you can get backdrops nowadays from the internet, and there's a lot of good websites. For example, this one that I've got here, I bought this from one called, I think it's called Cake Backdrops, and I really love this one. It's got a lovely fine art feel to it. I've used it for more than a few shoots, even some corporate shoots, and it just gives off a really nice effect. But you don't even have to go there if you want. You can find backdrops at some other alternative places. So for example, fabric stores will sell offcuts like this. And you can use these as a backdrop in its own right, or you can buy an offcut of material, layer it onto a backdrop to give that nice fine art effect. In addition to them, sometimes you can find backdrops in places you would normally expect. So for one shoot, I wanted something which is a little bit more rougher, and I bought this. This is actually a painter's dropship that I bought from Mitre 10 up the road. And no one has been the wiser up until now. And I think, in my opinion, it gives a really nice effect. It's just a little bit more rougher in terms of texture than a normal backdrop. And on top of that as well, you can really have a lovely contrast between, I guess, the subject and the background. And it has that kind of classic look to it as well. And you wouldn't normally expect it. So backdrops work really well. I like to use a lot of different backdrops, and in my opinion, as long as the photo looks good at the end of the day, that's all people care about. In terms of props, I like to use a variety of different ones in shoots. I think that they can help really create a nice set for a portrait shoot, but also they can really help build that fine art look or that classic style look that I'm looking to create for a shoot. So for example, I will use retro looking chairs, ladders, carpet even, that helps create some contrast, wooden crates, even retro lamps, anything that will just create a nice fine art look as part of a set design. You can get pretty much everything you need at a really reasonable price, surprisingly, at Facebook Marketplace. There's always someone throwing stuff out or selling stuff for cheap. In terms of the ladder, I bought that at one of the retro stores in Newtown. Any of those kind of places or antique shops will have what you're looking for, especially if you're looking to create a fine art style shoot. So when I'm doing fine art, classic style shoots, I really like to have a group of people around me that can help. So for example, having a good makeup artist on set is a blessing. A stylist who can help you out in terms of wardrobe, that's another great blessing if you can get one. An assistant that can help you out with lighting, and even another set of eyes. Someone that, can just go, look, what you're doing here is really good, but have you ever thought of this? Because sometimes you may not think of everything during a shoot, or you might be under so much pressure that you might miss something. And, I'm always willing to listen to ideas and, entertain what other people are thinking. And I think, if you've got these people around you, listen to them, use them, because they might have something that you have not picked up on, and they can really, really help when you're trying to get the best photos for these kind of shoots. In terms of lighting, I like to keep the lighting as simple as possible. I know nowadays, especially on YouTube and Instagram, you see the reels where they've got one light here, one light there, one light above, and, an overhead light, a key light, and then, you see the next reel and it's just one person using one light. Come on, one light, right? But, I think there's a real skill in simplicity, and there's a real skill in being able to create amazing light and capture amazing images just using one light, maybe two at the most. But you don't always have to use strobes and flash. I like to also use daylight and even LED light. If you put a modifier on an LED, it's a great way of replicating daylight, and also it's just another way of shooting and creating a fine art shoot. So I like to use all three, and I think all three will give you great results. So in terms of cameras, I like to use both film and digital. Lately I'm using more and more film. At the moment I'm only using 35mm, but in the future I wouldn't mind picking up a medium format film camera, but that maybe a little bit later on down the line. There's also a bit of a misconception that you need to use the most modern camera with the most modern lens. Yeah, that helps, but at the end of the day, as someone once told me, the best camera in the world is the one you've got in your hands. So whatever you've got, as long as it works, that's all that counts. For me personally, I really love the look of medium format, which is why I'm looking at getting a medium format film camera. But I use a medium format digital camera, which is this. So this is a Fuji GFX 50S. This is the original. I think this is brilliant for portraiture. I use a 63 prime, which is a really lovely lens for portraiture as well. This camera's been superseded more than a few times. It's over 8 years old, but it still produces brilliant results, and some of the quality of the images you get are beautiful, especially when you're creating fine art shoots. But in terms of film, currently I'm using this. So this is a Konica Minolta Alpha 9. This was built in 1998, I believe. And this is Sony Zeiss lens. This is a zoom. It's, what is this? A 24-70. It is 24. Yeah, 24-70. This is a really lovely lens to use as well for portraiture. Typically, I don't like to use zoom lenses. I prefer to use primes, but this one was pretty much new in the box, which is why I got it. And I think using both is great for this style and this genre, because when you use film and you scan it in, you can see the sprockets, and it kind of just gives a really nice feeling when you're shooting in film, and when you give that to a client and they see the sprockets, they're like, oh wow, it kind of has a bit of a nostalgia factor to it. And I think it just looks really cool for this kind of classic fine art look. But on the other hand, digital medium format, I think, is pretty amazing when it comes to creating fine art style portraiture. But as I said, as long as you've got a camera, as long as the final image looks good, that's all that counts. So that's it. Come to the end. That's how I do, my take on, classic fine art shoots. If you got questions, please feel free to reach out to me. If you want to book me, just send me a message. And yeah, I'll leave you with some B-roll and some photos of today's shoot. And yeah, see you soon.